This is the Samsung Galaxy S8. It was released in April of 2017, and believe it or not, at that time, this was one of the best phones in the market. But now it's 4 years old, so should you buy it in 2021? Well, no and yes. I'll explain why throughout the video, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Okay, so let's start with the design. So the Samsung Galaxy S8 has a very typical glass sandwich design. The back glass has a glossy finish, which maybe you like. I personally don't, but I don't care too much about it because I always use cases. But especially for this phone, I would highly recommend you to use a case because from all the drop test videos I've watched about this phone, it seems like the back glass is very fragile. However, because I've always used this case, so far everything is fine. I'll have links to this case and some other good ones in the description if you want to pick one up. Now, what I don't like about the design is the curved edges on the front, for the same reason pretty much everyone else doesn't like them. They're not very useful. Yes, they look good, but I think instead of making the phone better, they make it worse because you can't really put a screen protector on it. I've had this phone for almost 2 years now, and I've yet to find a case that would properly cover all front sides of the phone. So it's something to consider if you're gonna buy this phone. Other than that, I like the design. It feels good in the hand and it feels like a premium, well-built phone. Also, there's almost no camera bump on the back, which I really like, and I bet you haven't seen this in a very long time. It also has a headphone jack, in case you didn't know. Okay, let's take a look at the screen. So this phone has a 1440p Super AMOLED HDR10 5.8-inch screen. And I feel like I have to say this, even 4 years later, at least the screen does not feel outdated. It's an amazing screen. It looks good, it's sharp, with great viewing angles and great colors, which is to be expected from an OLED screen. Basically, it's a pretty damn good screen. Now, I say it doesn't feel outdated if you forget about refresh rate, because this is a 60Hz screen. However, I think if you're watching this video and you're thinking about getting the S8, you're probably switching from a phone that already doesn't have a high refresh rate screen, so it's probably not a big deal. Now, a 5.8-inch screen is not too big for today's standards, but it's a good screen size. At least for me, it doesn't feel too small or too big. I can comfortably type on it, read text, and get pretty much everything done very easily. Just to give you an idea, here's an iPhone XS, also with a 5.8-inch screen. The S8 is slightly taller, but the iPhone is a bit wider. If you ask me, again, I prefer the way the S8 feels in the hand. However, I like the way the iPhone looks, even with the notch. The screen on the S8 gets fairly bright and fairly dark. You shouldn't have any problems using this phone outdoors or at night in a dark room. When this phone was released, this was pretty much the best screen on any smartphone, which is normally the case with Samsung phones. So overall, the screen is pretty good. I don't have too many complaints about it. Now, the phone I have is equipped with a Snapdragon 835 processor and 4 gigs of RAM, and I have some mixed feelings about that. So using this phone to perform basic tasks like calling, texting, browsing, watching YouTube, and things like that, there shouldn't be any problems. There might be a few hiccups here and there, but generally this is not a bad phone for, I guess, light usage. When it comes to gaming though, although this phone has a beautiful screen compared to other phones in the same price range, I still wouldn't recommend you to buy this phone because in my opinion, playing games on this 4-year-old phone is not a super smooth experience, or at least something you would enjoy. Now, I think it's partially because of the battery, which I will talk about next, but also software. You see, at most, Android phones get 3 yearly major software updates, and because this phone is more than 3 years old, Samsung basically doesn't support it anymore, which could mean that it's not fully optimized for all the apps you could download from the Play Store. I don't know too much about software, but I think there is some potential to increase the performance of this phone through a software update. Okay, so the battery. Now, this phone has a 3000 mAh battery, which I think is a decent sized battery for this phone. However, if you're gonna buy this phone, you're probably gonna get it used, and if the phone you get never had its battery replaced, chances are it's gonna have terrible battery life, just like mine. But let's say you get the battery replaced. I still wouldn't say it has an amazing battery life because it never had an amazing battery life to begin with. When this was released, it had good battery life. It wasn't great. So again, even if you get the battery replaced, don't set your expectations too high. You might be disappointed. So when it comes to battery life, I would say it's 6 or maybe 7 out of 10, at least in my opinion. Okay, finally, let's talk about my favorite part, the cameras. So this phone has 2 cameras, one on the front and one on the back. On the back, there's a 12 megapixel standard wide-angle camera, which is optically stabilized. When this phone was released, there weren't too many phones with OIS cameras, so it was kind of a big deal. But I think we all just want to know, how's the camera? Is it good? or is it bad? Well, in my opinion, it's good. You're looking at photos taken from this camera, and for how much you can buy this phone, I think it's a very good camera. Generally, it takes good photos and videos. Sometimes photos can be slightly overexposed and oversharpened, but I still like the results I can get from this camera. Unfortunately, it doesn't have night mode, so low light photos can get quite grainy, which is one of the downsides of this camera in 2021. I think the selfie camera is also good, nothing crazy, it's just okay in my opinion. But other than that, the only thing I don't like about this phone when it comes to cameras is that it doesn't have an ultra wide angle camera. I don't care too much about telephoto cameras, but yeah, I wish I had an ultra wide angle camera. So to sum it up, I think this phone has a nice design, screen, and cameras, considering you can pick one up for somewhere between 150 and 200 Canadian dollars. However, in my opinion, you could be disappointed with the performance and battery life. That being said, this is probably not the phone to get for most people. Again, because of not so good battery life and performance. But I think this phone can work great as a backup. That's why I still have this. It's not my daily driver. So, in my opinion, it might be worth getting a Galaxy S8 in 2021 as a backup phone. Also, in case you were wondering, the dark spots on the back of this phone are actually water drops inside the phone, because I water damaged this phone. So if you have an S8, keep it away from water. I learned this the hard way. But anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you later.